You're listening to the Run for Your Lives podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. I'm Daphne.
And I'm Pake.
And this is the Run for Your Lives podcast.
This episode, we're talking about the Chinese science fiction film The Wandering Earth, which is directed by Frant Gwo and released February 5th, 2019.
I love that we have been doing some newer movies mixed in with some older movies lately. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And this is our third subtitled movie that we've done, I believe.
First one that's not Korean.
Yes.
It's the first Chinese film that we've covered.
Yeah. It actually was China's first kind of foray into the science fiction realm of movies.
Mm-hmm.
I have some notes on that I'll cover later in production notes.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'll go ahead and give a shout out, hopefully he's listening, to my good friend Kyle Stoltz. He's actually the reason that we're covering this movie, is just like meeting and talking with him. He was a fan of it. He really enjoyed it, and so he had recommended it to me. And so he told me I should watch it, and then the next time we met up, and he was like, "So did you watch it?" And I was like, "No," because I've got so many things that I do. No, but I told him, I was like, "But it sounds like it fits in the Run for Your Lives realm, so give me a good excuse to watch it. We can cover it on here." And so I'm glad that he mentioned it, because I did really enjoy it, and it was a fun movie to watch, for sure.
Yeah, I really did as well. It gave me these vibes of like Gravity, Snowpiercer, 2001: A Space Odyssey, and The Day After Tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And those are just a few, because I felt like at different times it reminded me of something else. So it was kind of like its own thing with just these little pieces that reminded me of other films.
Yeah.
So I liked that. Plus, I thought the visuals were incredible.
Oh, man.
Throughout this movie.
You know, I'm sure, jumping the gun into stuff a little bit, but you know how these things are very important to me. CGI had some really rough moments. Really, just the stuff in the transport vehicles, the transport trucks, when you're driving around in those. Oh, CGI, not good there. But then they more than made up for it with some really big visual effects and visual shots of, I'll just throw out some of them that I really liked the most, is like when Pijang is going back in the hibernation chamber, and then you kind of seeing the space station rotating, as it's very ominous, as it's kind of like the gassing him back to sleep, whatever, or trying to. That shot was cool. Or when I'm pretty sure it was Wang Lei shoots the flare up, and it kind of follows the flare up into the sky, which was really cool. Or the elevator shaft when they're climbing up it, and it's kind of showing the different people and levels as it goes up. There's some really cool shots like those. I was like, man, that's ingenious, honestly.
Yeah, the cinematography, I feel like they made some shots count. They really gave us such a cool view of different things. So I definitely loved that. I feel like a lot of the budget for this movie was spent on effects.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when I found out that the lead actor in the film received $15,000.
Oh, wow.
That's it.
Yeah, which is not the least amount for a big star in this movie.
No, it's not.
I don't know if that's covered in your production notes or not. I haven't looked.
Oh, yes. The big name in this film, who was not the lead, but actually played a very pivotal role in the film.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you've got it.
I feel like I can just say it now.
Yeah, go ahead. We'll talk about it. It's up.
Yeah, because he's a big name, he actually was brought in just to do a cameo appearance.
Mm-hmm.
But then they decided to write a bigger role because he was doing so well. And then towards the end, there were some financial problems with this film. And so he was asked to do his role for no money. Not only did he accept that, he also gave $9 million of his own money to help the film be able to continue.
Yes. Which, of course, then it grossed so much at the box office and stuff, he made his money back. And people are wondering, because we didn't mention who that was. That is the actor Jing Wu.
Yes.
Who played, Liu Peixiang, which was the father who was in the space station the whole movie.
Yes.
So yeah, which again, we're going to try. We talked about this with the South Korean movies. The Chinese pronunciations, I did a little bit of work and tried to look up stuff.
Me too.
It's not going to be perfect, and I know that, but I'm going to try
Yeah.
a little.
We always do our best. Like, we want to go into this and be as close as we can to the actual pronunciation, but we also admit that sometimes, it is what it is, and we do the best that we can.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much in this film that I enjoyed, and I feel like we should, since we've already kind of broken into it anyway, I feel like we should just get started.
Yeah.
All right. So here's my little behind the scenes piece for The Wandering Earth. It was filmed in Beijing and Qingdao, China, as well as Iceland. It was loosely based on the 2000 collection of short stories, The Wandering Earth, by Liu Cixin, I believe that's how you pronounce it, who is a Hugo Award-winning novelist, not for The Wandering Earth, but for other works. Originally, the Chinese movie industry contacted such big industry directors as James Cameron, Luc Besson, and Alfonso Cuarón, and all turned the project down. Probably because the budget was not real big.
Mm-hmm.
And that it was $48 million, which a lot of those directors are used to having, multiple $100 million budgets to work with.
Yeah.
So probably realized they were not going to be able to deliver with such a small amount. But, who knows? Prior to directing The Wandering Earth, Frant Gwo had directed only 2 other films. And this is his first science fiction film.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned already the budget was $48 million, but it grossed just under $700 million worldwide. It is China's 4th highest grossing film of all time, the 4th highest grossing non-English film to date, and it's ranked 125th on the highest grossing movies of all time.
It's awesome.
Yeah. It was just over 2 hours at 125 minutes. And Pake, why don't you break everything down with your synopsis?
All right. This might be one of the longer, quick synopses that I have, but I think it sums up pretty good. As the sun is dying out, people all around the world build giant planet thrusters to move Earth out of its orbit and sail Earth to a new star system, or solar system, really. Yet the 2,500-year journey comes with unexpected dangers, and in order to save humanity, a group of young people in this age of a wandering Earth fight hard for the survival of humankind.
Oh, they do fight hard. There's one specific moment in this film that I really loved. And it showed how it didn't matter where you were from. Everyone pulled together. And I just love the way that all... I mean, it was one of those sentimental, fun, happy, make you feel good moments.
Yeah.
It's watching people from different countries work together to try to save the world. So I definitely enjoyed that so much. That's just one of the things I loved about this movie.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some really great, those moments. Like it had some really good emotional beats that there was definitely one moment where I was just like, I'm going to have to pause this movie for a minute just to like clear my eyes for a second because they are real watery.
Yeah. There were a couple of moments that I was definitely teary-eyed.
Mm-hmm. And there's like, and it all kind of was like in the same moment. There's like the big moment, of course, where they're trying to ignite Jupiter. And so a lot of those stuff, there's a lot of tension in a lot of those scenes surrounding that. There's a lot of, like you mentioned, where everybody kind of comes together and there's like this real like human empowerment kind of feel to those where you're just like, we can accomplish great things when we come together.
Yes.
And great emotional beats, like I said. So like there's some really good stuff. A lot of it does kind of center around like that climax of the film, but there's some great stuff in here all throughout.
Absolutely. I was struck by different things at different times. One of the things that really, I think, hit me looking at the environment is being a fan of Snowpiercer, I'm used to seeing the train go, worldwide. But the thought of these trucks moving over ice to go to countries that were out in the middle of the water, like when they were going to Sulawesi, which is in Indonesia, and they weren't on a boat or anything. It's because the Earth it was negative 72 degrees, I believe. Everything was frozen solid. Yeah. And I just couldn't.
Yeah, they had the Canadian, group of soldiers that met up with them there because they just travel. There's no oceans to worry about.
No. So that really struck me, I think, as it was real serious. And so many things happened in this film that I just would shake my head and be like, wow, this is just, if this is China's first entry in the sci-fi genre, I'm all in for what they do next. Was it a perfect movie? No. But I really liked what I saw. And I feel like they can continue to improve. And the cool thing about this, and this isn't a spoiler, but it kind of is, there will be a sequel in 2023.
Ooh.
So
that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm excited for that. When I read that, I was pretty pumped because I want to see what they do next. I hope that they allow Frant Gwo to continue the story. I hope he wants to continue the story.
Yeah, but you wonder if it's going to be like a continuation of these characters, or if they're going to jump forward 2,500 years to when they actually make it to the next solar system and what that's going to look like. So
yeah,
who knows?
I know. Could be so cool. Like, I'm super excited to see where they take it.
Yeah.
It's got a good story, so let's see.
Well, I think it's about time to go ahead and break down some of these characters and thoughts like that, which really is all there is to this movie. I know, it does focus around a global disaster, which is why it fits in this, this podcast and the realm of what we cover. Not even global, but
Interstellar.
Yeah, the whole solar system is going through a disaster.
Yeah, the sun is definitely rebelling against the solar system. So
yeah. But so even though that builds the whole background of everything that's going on, pretty much everything that we will cover is just the characters, because that's what the focus is, and that's what's really going on. What we're watching is the dynamics between all of these characters. And there was some really interesting ones. It was enough to where there's moments in this movie where I was confused. I was like, what is what's the significance of this character and what's going on between these two, and then when you get the reveals, you're like, ooh, that's cool. That's perfect. Perfect timing where they gave us that. So yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah, we didn't have all the information right up front, especially Lu Chi and his sister. We did not have the information. We didn't know, they're supposedly sister and brother, but we didn't have enough information. How did he have another child if he's on a space station? I couldn't figure it out. Oh,
the whole movie, which we'll talk about, because I guess, we'll jump into Chi to start with on his stuff. But, yeah. But a big part of that was me being like, I didn't know I didn't realize he had a sister. I was like, it was just little Chi there at the beginning of the movie. So I was like, because his dad left the next day. How does this make sense? And there's all these things. And I was like, oh, okay, so there's this, but where does she fit into this still? Because the mother died, we find out even earlier than that. So so when we got that reveal, I was like, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense. And that's actually really touching. So
yeah, that was a really cool story. And we will get to that. We saw Chi was just a 4-year-old when his dad left him in the care of his grandfather. We see him much later being very bitter towards his father for leaving him, but not only for leaving him, he blames him for what he sees as his father killing his mother by stopping her treatment.
Yeah, which, that scene hit me hard, hard, capital letters all the way through.
Yes.
That's the one. That's another one that I really needed a second to okay, hang on, because I was wondering, because Chi was really angry with his father when they call while they're in the transport, and he's like, I have nothing to say to him, and it was I mean, I understand he's been gone for 17 years, and that's got to be hard for you to grow up without your dad there, but you knew why he left, and you've known this whole time the importance of the role he's playing, and you've had communication with him, so why? And then we kind of get that the backstory of that, and it, he had to choose, him being part of the space station. Obviously his kids are going to be people who are able to go underground. He gets that kind of, bonus there, at least, that his family will be safe.
I think that's one of the reasons why he went, is because he wanted to save his family. I mean, he gave his father this little, what looks like a thick dog tag, which is much more than that, and said, this is the key, now you guys will be able to get underground when I leave. Don't lose it. And I think that's one of the reasons why he did it. I think he knew that if he went and did this, it would guarantee his family the chance to live.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure, I'm not sure. It's just, this is what I was piecing together.
Yeah. But it makes sense. You would say, as a bonus for getting these people to do this thing, like, you need to guarantee their family's safety. That's a good way to get, the people to volunteer to do it.
Yes.
But
absolutely.
We find out, unfortunately, with the system, because there's only so much room underground in these underground cities and stuff, that there can only be one guardian.
Yes.
With the child. And instead of picking his wife, he picks his father. Because his wife has been sick with, I assume, is cancer. They don't really say it, but that's because they say they had to stop her treatments, and she ended up passing away because of that. But it seemed like she was sick enough that, like, it didn't seem like she was going to really be able to recover anyway over time.
Yeah.
And so it's a hard decision, but it's a decision he has to make to be like, well, I know that my father is going to be there to be able to raise this kid.
Yes.
And for some reason, in Chi's mind, though, he's very bitter and angry about that, seeing it as, no, you chose to let mom die when you had a choice not to. And he's held on to it that way.
Yeah. And so he's incredibly angry at his father, doesn't want to talk to him. In fact, we meet him when he's 21. And he's planning to go out with his sister and take her out into the above ground area, which it sounds like she has not been to since her rescue. But it sounded like he didn't plan to come back, because her saying that to him almost got them in a lot of trouble with the underground guy who was selling them the spacesuit and the clearance, like the forgeries.
And I don't know what their plan was. Maybe he was still feeling so bitter. He knew his dad was, like, retiring and coming home. And maybe that anger was still there to where he didn't want to be there when his dad got back. He was going to go find a different underground city to live in or something. I don't know what his plan was exactly.
Yeah, and he had left a note in his room written on a piece of paper on his desk. And they didn't give us the information on what the note said. I assume it was him saying goodbye.
Yeah.
That his grandfather would come and see it. I think his plan was for him to take Han out to see the above ground area and what it looked like, and then send her back. And then he would just continue on.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what he says, is once we get to wherever they were going, he's like, then you're going to get on a shuttle and go back. And so that was his plan. But as far as exactly why he was leaving, it's just up to speculation. But but he stole his grandfather, or he didn't steal it. His sister stole his grandfather's clearance card so that they could get access to one of the vehicles, which he can't drive. He cannot drive. We learned that. He figures it out, but at first, not great. And they go out, and so his sister's getting to see, what it really looks like above ground. And I think the last time she was above ground was when she was a baby. Yeah. So because the grandfather worked, I think, as a rescuer, driver. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure what it was, but it seemed... There's a lot of jobs up on the surface that there were. But, they had that, which I was really... It took me a while, like a lot of the movie, I was real confused. There was... Because Dodo is actually her name, because you know with Han
Yes.
Dodo, but the way that Chinese works is you say the
True.
last name and then the first name.
Okay.
So Han would be her last name because it was
Okay.
also like she took that from her grandfather. So then it was like Han Zhang, and so
All right.
yeah. So you know, going with Dodo is her first name.
Dodo.
You know, she
Okay.
would go by what they would call her.
All right.
Dodo, whatever it was. But Dodo, I think, is closest. But again, limited research that I can do.
Yeah.
But throughout the movie, she keeps calling Chi Huko.
Yes.
And I was like, what is
know.
this? And it drove me crazy because I was like, is it like a slang term, like idiot or something? Because at first, like when she would say it, it was because he was doing something dumb. Because even with the subtitles on, it just said Huko. And so I was like, well, what does that translate to? What is she calling him? And then even like Tim started doing it and stuff, and I was like, what does this mean? And it to the point that it was making me mad. I'm going down this rabbit hole on Google trying to figure out what this word, like these words mean, and I can't find it anywhere. And then finally something clicks in my head, and I was like, that's his nickname. That's just what, like, I don't know what it means, but it's just another name that he goes by, and people are calling it. And I was like, it was like the biggest like sigh moment where I was like, all this digging for nothing when it's literally just his name, like what he goes by to people who know him closer. And I was like, okay, like I feel dumb for racking my brain to figure this out, but I'm like, you know what? But at least I figured it out.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I wondered it as well, and I just didn't dig into it. And I'm glad I didn't, because I would have gone down the rabbit hole too. That would have been two of us trying to figure it out when it's staring us in our faces. So yeah, that's good that I didn't go down it as well.
But yeah, back to Chi. He's got kind of a track record of blaming people for people's deaths that really didn't have a choice.
Yes,
and we see that next with the commander, with Captain Wang Lei, where where they're going through the elevator shaft and they're got to take the lighter core to that engine, and that is where unfortunately their grandfather's young does pass away there.
Yes.
He's very he takes all that anger and stuff out on Wang Lei.
Yes, he does.
And
he's very angry. He's a very angry kid.
And it's kind of like, you let my grandfather die. This is because of you. But honestly, there was nothing they could do. The one guy that did die did manage to save Zhang for an extra 2 minutes or whatever. It didn't last long, unfortunately, but they did what they could. But that's just, he's got that kind of, that's a part of his character, is he's he easily will lash out at other people and blame them for things.
Yes.
And it takes to the point that then, after that happens, they decide, we're going to leave this mission team. We don't have a transport. You don't have me as a driver. I'm no use anyway. So we're going back home. And luckily it was them meeting Yi that kind of turns them around, just because they get this another transport. There's another lighter core in there. It's like, well, this is what they need. And then hearing their transmission of we lost our lighter core, we lost this, is our mission has failed. And so it's a real hero moment for him to then step up and drive back to them and be like, no, we've got you. We can carry you the rest of this way. We'll make sure that this mission does happen.
Yes, I appreciated that too. But I feel like we have to go back and talk about when they got arrested, which was prior to this. When they meet the amazing Tim, who was the comic relief of this film.
Yes.
He was a riot. He just made me laugh so much. They did get arrested at the checkpoint once they were out and about, and they meet this other prisoner named Tim. And they were always talking about, because Tim wasn't Chinese. I can't remember who he said his mother.
Australian.
His mother was Australian, and his father was Chinese. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Anyway, they meet Tim with the bleach blonde hair, and I'm just thinking, okay, he's going to end up being part of this, but I don't know how long he's going to live. I'm afraid he's going to be one of those that dies along the way. I'm not sure, but for now, he's fun.
Yeah.
But then there's this earthquake, and it looked like, honestly, Chi started it. Like, he banged on the wall with his metal. I mean, he's very strong. Even without that metal arm, he's very strong. I questioned if he was a superhero and they just didn't tell us, or what was going on with that. But he bangs on the wall and the crack goes up. Then there's an earthquake. And I'm thinking...
Which the crack was just a coincidence. That it was cracking because of the earthquake. It just happened at the time he hit the wall.
Yes, it did.
Which is fucking... But the look on Tim's face where he's like, holy shit, what did you just do? Like, how did you do that?
I loved it. I loved it. He was just a riot. And their grandfather, Jiang, came in and tried to bribe the warden. And I'm like, well, what is he using? What is he trying to do? Oh my God. Okay, so I looked it up to find out what it was. He was trying to bribe the police with pornographic VR glasses. Okay, so that made me laugh. So he ends up in jail with them. The grandfather comes to get them, tries to get them off, and then he ends up in jail. And then we get the earthquake. And so the warden comes over and unlocks the door, and that's all he gets to do because then everything falls on top of him.
Yeah.
And then they manage to get Tim out as well, even though at first I think they were going to leave him there. And so at that point, he just is with them for the rest of his life.
Yeah, because even when they separate from the mission team for a while, I was like, and of course, Tim's still with them. Just like he's stuck in that moment. He's like, which one do I go with? And he's like, I guess I'm going to go with these guys because I've been with them since the jail cells.
And poor Tim. I mean, there was one point where that was particularly disgusting. And it was basically the guy sitting next to him in the transport throwing up in his helmet. And then one of the windows was breaking on the transport truck. So they had to put, I think that's what was happening. And then they had to put their helmets on. He was trying to make Tim take his gross helmet. And he was going to take a clean one. But then somehow none of them had anything in it. And it was fine.
They kind of skipped over that to where it went back and was like, and it's clean. I was like, I don't know how he managed that because it was full.
It was gross. Oh
man, yeah, it was because I was like, don't puke in your helmet, dude. I was like, no, you're gonna have to put that shit back on at some point.
Yes, yes. And later on, I mean, and the character, I don't have his name written down, but he did serve a big thing later on that helped with.
Yeah, I have like his like. I don't know, last name, first name, I don't know. One of the names is H-E, which I would think he, but I don't know. Hey, he,
I think
something.
It's he.
But,
he played a big part in the end. Because they all did. Once we get to the end, you'll learn a little bit more about the parts and pieces, but he did play a very big part in the end of the movie and how they saved the world.
Yes. Which, again, while we're still on, we've jumped around a little bit in other characters, but it's all connections to Chi as we talk kind of through his story. And I do love that the whole, like, plan of igniting and combusting Jupiter to give them that force to push back came from him. Now, we do find out from Moss, the, like, AI system in the satellite in the space station, that the Israelis had already come up with this idea and proposed it, and it had been shown that there's a 0% chance it was going to work, so they just threw it away. But the fact that, without knowing that Chi comes up with this, remembering that, because he's looking up. And I loved that visual, too, of seeing Jupiter above them and having the eye, in quotations, as you would...
That was... Oh, incredible.
And it kind of jumping back to when he was a little 4-year-old and talking to his dad right before his dad left, and him saying, it looks like there's an eye on Jupiter. He says it's not an eye, it's a windstorm. And, it's hydrogen, and that's when he makes that connection, like, we could blow this thing up.
Jupiter is like a huge balloon composed of 90% hydrogen. Yeah. And he connects it, and he contacts Yi and tells him. And then, never underestimate the power of two geniuses, because I feel like the two of them were super smart, figured shit out, and made it happen. And I think together they were a pretty good team. And I'm glad that we got to see that because it was a cool connection for Chi to his father to remember that. Because I feel like his only memory that he had was looking at the stars with his father.
Yeah.
You know, it was really special. I mean, it was really special when you think about some of the stuff. I mean, he told his son in the beginning, when you can see Jupiter without a telescope, you know, I'll be coming home. So, yeah, I liked how that came about with the hydrogen and the match and everything. It all seemed really cool.
Definitely.
Something a little bit, something a little different. I liked that.
Yes. And of course, the plan did work with some modifications, but
Yes.
which we'll talk about. But
yeah,
it does eventually work. And so I love just to stay on Chi's course in a way right now that that I loved that we get kind of at the end of everything, jumps forward 3 years, and we see that he's still they've given him a job driving one of these transport trucks. He still has not perfected it, but
no. In fact, it's like a repeat of the beginning. So I'm not sure how long they should allow him to continue to try or how much damage needs to be done to other vehicles before they decide, I don't think you were meant for driving. Let's try your sister. Maybe she can drive.
Yeah. But we see that Yi Yi is also part of this team here. And so you mentioned the two geniuses coming together, even they were smart enough to be we got to keep these two together in case we need them for anything else.
Yeah, they're definitely, I loved the dynamic of the team at the end of that group of Wang Lei's, his team plus Chi's team, all coming together. I liked that a lot. I liked that teamwork. And I love how his sister was able to do her own heroic moment in this movie too. We'll talk about that a little bit more once we get to talking about her.
Yeah. Which I'm ready to do unless you have some more notes about Chi.
No, I think we're pretty good. I'm ready to move on.
Cool. So, Han Do is the next. Again, don't take me 100% on that because I could be very wrong, but that's what I believe it is based off of. I just do my little how do you pronounce this in Chinese? Google searches and how do you?
All right.
You get those YouTube videos where they're how to pronounce this, and then there's a big a really famous industrial company in China named Pinduoduo. And so I kind of took it from that because that's how you pronounce that company. So
okay. Well, we didn't get the connection on how she was his sister for a little bit.
Yeah.
Until
it was driving me crazy a little bit. Yeah. The whole movie, because even after we got that really hard hitting backstory between G and his father and what happened and why he harbored this anger, and I was okay, that was emotional, but where does she fit into this?
Yes.
Still, I don't know.
Where did she come from?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, basically, their plan of moving the Earth is because the Earth still rotates on an axis. That's what it does. But in order to keep it going in a straight path, that's what those big equator torque engines were for, was to stop the rotation of the Earth and keep it going straight. When you you get rid of the rotation, it's daylight 100% of the time on one half of the Earth, and it's night. The dark side of the Earth is what they called it. But also, with no rotation, the tides are all screwed up and everything, and so giant tsunamis were going to wipe out pretty much anybody who lived on the surface at that time because there's no rotation to keep those in balance.
Yeah, and it basically wiped out half of the Earth's population at that point. And she was rescued by Zheng on one of his rescue missions that he went out on. There was this huge flood after the tsunami, and she was a baby that was passed from person to person until she reached him, and he adopted her. So they never knew who her parents really were.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was a beautiful story about how a baby was saved, but sad that she has no idea. All she has is her grandfather and her brother. Yeah. And she calls Pake her uncle
Mm-hmm.
when she calls him on the shuttle. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Even though, I mean, because technically it's weird because then it would more be her brother if her brother-in-law, because then again, because Jiang is not Pi Zheng's father. He was the father of the mother who passed.
Oh.
That was his daughter that he was chosen over, because he says he names Han Dodo after his daughter who passed. So that's an interesting thing, because then Chi is living with that like memory because his sister is named the same name as his mother. So it's very
he's got that so he has that reminder every day.
Yeah.
That his mother is gone because his sister has the same name. Yeah, it's a very complicated situation. Yeah. We meet her at the very beginning, and she is this kind of precocious student, I think. And she's making fun of the girl in the class who is talking about hope, because she really wasn't thinking about that. All she was thinking about was, how can I get out of class, get to my brother, and get out and see what the world looks like?
Yeah. But
by the end, she spoke about hope the same way that the girl in the class did. And I thought that was a really cool, like, full circle on her coming around to see. I mean, after everything she's been through, that was a lot, for her to change. Although anyone would, going through all of those things.
Yeah. And then, if I can jump, I guess, kind of closer to the end, she sees both sides of that hope, kind of the thought on that, pretty quickly back and forth, because the first time she's kind of giving this, like, signal out, and as they're traveling to the engine location, she's just they're kind of trying to contact everybody that they can, every truck that they pass.
Yes.
And nobody's listening. Everybody's completely given up all hope, and nobody cares. We see some of them being like, oh, they have a plan. It's like, why are they even still trying? Like, it's hopeless.
They were desperate.
Of course, she hasn't given them the plan, so they don't know what this last plan is, but people just don't care. But then we see the other side of it, and that was kind of the big emotional, empowering scene, is her getting the global, broadcast out, and Pi Zheng does that for her from the space station, and, then she explains what's going on.
Yes.
And everybody then, there's a lot of people who turn around. There's people who are talking like, what's the point of having a couple more hours with our families when it's all over anyway? But if we do this, there could be more.
Yes.
It would be like, we were not even going to make it home before it's all over anyway, so why are we even trying? Let's at least do something.
Right.
And
Let's fight. Let's fight. And she gets that. I mean, she calls up to the space station to get her uncle to help her. I mean, she finds the little, I don't know what the device was called, but it was basically the dog tag looking fob thing that allowed her to communicate with her uncle that was on the space station. And she reaches out to him, and he's able to get them to do the global communication since it was over. But we also, at some point, have to talk about Moss, because I've got lots of theories about that. Lots of theories about Moss. Not all are good.
I'm interested to hear.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, then I guess, I don't have a lot of other notes about Dodo herself, other than just, like, some of the, like, scenes surrounding that with her speech and stuff. Those were a lot of that great tension and stuff where you have...
Yeah.
How about Tim and Chi? Fuck this shit. And he just jumps down. There's some just great moments. The connection, the truck barely making it out. And he was, as like right before he died, was able to get that power connected after he had snuck in there. And just everything kind of happening right there in place as it needed to. And it was awesome.
And Chi's father figuring out that he could detach the space station from, I think it was called Project Helios, or the Helios Project.
Yeah.
He was able to detach the station from the Helios, and realizing that he could be the final piece of the puzzle to get the gases to explode and get the Earth out of Jupiter's pull.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, a lot of tension. But he had a lot of fighting with Moss to do anything. Moss just wanted him to go to sleep.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I guess that's what's next in my notes to talk about. If you don't have any other notes,
no, I'm good.
Is Liu, Pizheng, and the space station itself, and everything going on up there and with him. Yeah.
So we know that he's an astronaut, have left his son with his father-in-law so he could go into space to save the Earth. And then we see him 17 years later. He's one day away from retirement and getting to return home.
That's how it always goes, isn't it?
Yes. Yes. And he's got this cool friend named Makarov, who's Russian, and makes him this moonshine. And I'm thinking, okay. And then he puts it in a compartment. I'm thinking that's going to come in handy later.
Oh, absolutely. The second that he stuck it into the spacesuit, and I was like, well, that's going to come in handy. Didn't know how it was, but I like how it did.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I love that. He didn't want to go. The crisis happened, and Moss's idea was for them to go into hibernation to conserve energy. But he didn't want to do that. Like, he fought it. And Moss wouldn't listen and put him in. Once he got in the system and laid down, he was put out. But he did find a way and got out of that later on. Also woke up his friend Makarov. And they go out on this mission outside of the space station.
They needed to get to the central command area.
Yeah. Well, they did get out there and start to dig. But unfortunately, Makarov's helmet gets hit. And we see him drift off.
Yeah.
That was sad.
Unfortunate. You know, he took that time to help, and it was because of his help was the only way that Pizheng got where he needed to go. To that, because it was the central command, because Moss had shut everything down where he was at in the hibernation stations or whatever, where he could not contact. But he said, well, if I can get to central command,
I can.
Then I have the codes to contact Earth and speak to my son and speak to my father and figure out what's going on.
Yeah. Definitely. And so he is able to get there. And one of the guys, it was funny because one of the guys that was in their little hibernation room actually rolled over and went back to sleep.
Yeah, just like, I don't have time for this. But it made me think, what do you think Project Helios, what was the purpose? I understand. They explain that. But the logistics of that. Because they had all of these human embryos that are going to restart civilization with animal DNA and crops and all this. But it was okay, but who's going to raise all of the embryos as children? Getting into some
Raised by wolves?
Raised by wolves. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking. It's that HBO Max show, which was really great, by the way. But... But that's exactly where my head went. I was just they got to build some kind of robots to take care of these kids. What's the plan? Or is it up to the astronauts that were still there?
I think it was up to the astronauts.
So so Moss's plan was to reawaken them from their hibernation however many years later and be oh, here's a bunch of kids you got to take care of now and you don't get to go home ever.
Yeah. I think honestly, I don't trust Moss. I got a lot of Hal vibes from Moss, which is very circa, 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Sorry, Pizheng. I can't do that.
No. Yeah, not good. Not good. We can't reach them. We can't do this. We can't do that. Honestly, I don't know. Even though Moss told him that Israel had suggested it was determined to be that it wouldn't work, I don't know that was accurate at all, because I think Moss wanted this. I think Moss figured... I really think...
I don't know. Just because, it's an AI that's set to make sure that the plans that have been instilled in it make it happen.
Yeah.
Which the plans are that once this Wandering Earth, Project Wandering Earth doesn't work, to shut that down and move to Project Helios.
Yes.
And so, it was going to do anything that it could to make sure Helios worked, which blasting the space station into a beam of energy is not going to make Helios happen.
No.
So he's going to fight against that. But I don't think it was necessarily like insidious. It was just kind of programmed to do what it was supposed to do at that, what its, programming was now telling it this is the end goal.
I think it knew that without outside intervention, nothing was going to work. So its plan was to put them all to sleep. And when it did wake them up, the Earth would already be destroyed and no one... It didn't want them to stay awake because they would realize what was happening and want to do something. So that's why it was putting them to sleep. Yeah,
because it didn't want him fighting back like he did and ending up convincing the actual humans back on Earth to let him take this last-ditch effort.
Yeah. Did not want it.
He didn't want that, for sure. But
yeah.
Again, I don't know if there was necessarily an evil against humanity kind of reason for doing that. It's just that's
I don't think it was I don't think it was against humanity. I just think that maybe it was giving up too easy.
Yeah. Well, I think with the 0% chance, that was true. They did it. The beam went up and it doesn't reach.
Yeah. True.
Now, I don't know in all of 0%, it didn't happen and it wasn't going to happen until the space station bridged that gap.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe that was within all the tests and, stuff that it ran. I guess it didn't consider that variable of the space station being blown up to make it happen. That wasn't in the variable list. I don't know.
I don't know. I got the weirdest vibe from that Moss after a little while. I was just like, I don't like you. You don't want to help. You just want to send everybody off. And its plan was to get, like you said, it had a directive. It wanted to follow its directive, which was to get the Helios project off and running. And it thought the easiest thing to do was to put everyone to sleep so they wouldn't realize what was happening.
Yeah.
And that's why it tried to put them to sleep before it sent that final communication out to everyone. It's pretty smart AI, but it did give me a lot of HAL vibes. So many HAL vibes.
Yeah. So then, of course, I like the way that it is overtaken. Is when it did come back into handy was the moonshine, the alcohol in the spacesuit, because of just damage that had been taken already, there was sparks and stuff kind of coming off of Moss. So Pijang uses that to just chunk the bottle of alcohol at it and ignite and sets the whole Moss system on fire and shuts it down.
Yeah,
which is really cool.
Yeah, I enjoyed that a lot. He wanted to help his son and those on Earth. He didn't want to give up on them.
Yeah.
And Moss was trying to follow the directive, and that meant nothing was going to save the people of Earth, so let's, continue civilization by following this other directive. I don't know if they were going to another planet, what was going on. I have no idea. Yeah, because
then they'd have to find... then the plan was maybe they had another planet that was habitable... in the new solar system they were headed to. I don't
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure.
There's a lot of gray areas, blind spots in that plan that we weren't I didn't know. I was like, so we don't have a planet, we don't have anyone to raise these kids. How exactly is the Helios really supposed to happen? But,
well, I had read too that, and I think I cover it in my production notes, that they cut some of the scenes out. Yes, they cut some of the scenes out, and that made the story confusing at times.
Yeah.
And I think that's why. So now it's I want to see the director's cut. I want to see these scenes that we missed. And it just took me back.
Hashtag give us the Gwo cut. Is that the
Gwo cut? I want the Gwo cut. But it made me think of The Happening. With the wedding story and character running around saying, why is everybody talking to me about this today? It's oh yeah, and we didn't see the earlier part because it was in a deleted scene. So it kind of took me back to that, but I quickly returned to this movie because this movie is much better than that one. I think, one of the saddest moments, and I did get really emotional, is when Chi and his father were talking at the end, and there was this emotional goodbye because he has decided to sacrifice himself and use the space station to be that final connector that's needed, that explosion, the match to blow up the Jupiter gases, break the Earth free. And it really touched me. Because, I mean, you think I'm connected, parents, I lost a parent. I lost my dad. And so any movies like this that showcase that type of relationship that, where the parent dies, it always hits me.
Yeah.
Just makes me feel, I get all the feels. So this one, you could tell that she was really pissed and he didn't want his dad to do it, but he knew he had to.
Yeah. Yeah, because at first he's very much just like yelling at him and being like, don't you dare do this.
Yeah.
Don't take yourself away from me too. And then he's even yelling at the people there on Earth, like, shut it down, don't let him do this. And it's like, it's the only way.
It has to
he
happen.
Dies or everyone dies. It's kind of,
that's hard.
You got to choose. It's those hard decisions. But yeah, then that conversation, because there's still a lot of that bitterness, but I think that conversation meant a lot to be able to let that go. And for them to end on a good note with each other, of him being like, you told me when I can see Jupiter without a telescope, you were coming back. And now Jupiter is right on top of us and you're not here. And you lied to me. And he's like, that's not the intention, but it's still, that's just Chi's character. He's bitter. Takes a lot of things very personal.
He does. He's very bitter. And he gets pissed off really easy.
Yeah.
He always looks at how things affect him, I think. He gets really upset and wants to blame somebody. I think he put a lot of that blame to his father, and what's he going to do if his father is gone? He's going to have to start to deal with that. He's going to have to start to deal with that frustration and anger and bitterness, and I'm not sure he wanted to.
Yeah. But I think the line that hit me the most from that is because he said, when you were a kid, I told you, if you look up into the sky and the stars, you'll see me there. And he's like, well, now look up this time and you will see me, I promise. And he can see the explosion as it happens. And
that got me. That right in the gut. Oh my God. Yep. Yeah, I needed tissues for that. That just made me so sad. You know what it reminded me of? Independence Day. Yep. When Randy Quaid's character goes up into the alien spaceship and blows up the plane, like flying a plane. He's the only one with the bomb left, and the bomb won't detach, like it won't launch. Yeah. So
there's a lot of those kind of things, like Armageddon has that. Yeah. Like it's
stuff that has to happen. And it just made me, it took me back there.
Yeah.
It definitely did. Which we'll be covering Independence Day at a later date.
Probably Armageddon too.
Yeah, probably Armageddon as well.
Lots of movies to do.
And the list keeps growing. We just added some more to it tonight.
Oh, yeah. All right. I think that kind of covers all of that I had in my notes for that character in that space station.
Yeah, I feel like we've covered a lot of the characters. We've kind of jumped around, but sometimes with these movies, you have to, because when it's an ensemble cast, it's a lot more difficult to do it like character by character, like we like to do it. So sometimes we have to hop around.
Yeah,
to do
because
things.
I'm thinking, for under characters, I still have like Han Xiang and Tim, and then Wang Lei and the team. It's like, but I think I've covered all the notes that I have on all of them as we've talked. Like you said, we've kind of gone through a lot of those side characters in the ensemble, talking about the storylines of the other ones. I think the only other note I have character-wise is, again, with Yi Yi, I really liked... he's trying to lay all the plans out for everybody, and it's very like, we have to do this, and he ends it with succeed or die. Any questions? And every single person raises their hand. He has perfect, sits down and turns away from but I'm not going to answer any of them. I laughed
I loved that. And I loved that he had those dice. Did you see his gold dice?
Yeah, he had like his like D20 like D&D dice. He was definitely like a super like D&D nerd.
I know.
And I was waiting for him to like roll them just to see like how is this going to turn out. Critical hit. We're going to do it. All right, cool. Like what's
I know, it was cool. I loved it. And I'm like, okay, are you giving him these dice because you want us to think he's a bigger nerd than he is? Because I already know he's a nerd and I'm totally down. But cool that you included the dice as well.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
Yeah, I feel like we've covered all the characters. I don't think that we have anything else.
Yeah. Let's see, I have a few other just random notes before you get into production notes and stuff.
Okay.
And again, I think I've covered some of those also. It's just like little observations. So, of course, it's our first Chinese film, of course.
Yeah.
And being with that, one thing I noticed, and I wouldn't have noticed it, except that I had paused the movie to take other notes as it was on the screen, and so then I caught it. But at the beginning of the movie, it's showing CNN coverage of the global disaster, what's happening with the sun. And I was looking at like the ticker tape thing at the bottom and like stuff, and there's a lot of like grammar mistakes and misspellings and stuff that were in it.
Oh, goodness.
And it's not a gripe because I was like, well, it's Chinese writers who are trying to do all of this stuff in CNN English, like, thing. So there's going to be a lot of those like little, because it was like, I didn't write down any of them exactly, but it was just like little thing like spelling lining or something with two N's, or like getting like the past and present tense of things wrong a little bit. Like they are, they have to running. Like it was very, and I was like, but that's understandable. And so, but I thought it was funny. It's like, I wouldn't have noticed that if I wouldn't have paused it here. Now I'm reading the stuff that's on the screen on the bottom of like the CNN report. And I'm like, oh, there's a lot of misspellings and stuff in here. I thought it was funny. And then, of course, I didn't really think about it till when they went on the surface and everything was frozen over. And I was like, well, yeah, of course. It's like the planet is moving through space with no sun. Yes. That would happen.
Of course it's going to freeze. Yeah. Because they're trying to move it to the Alpha Centauri, which I swear I've heard that before. I mean, like in another movie. Solar system, and it's like 4.2 light years. And it puts it into this deep freeze. Which makes me think of Snowpiercer, like...
I had that same thought, yeah.
I'm like, okay, I get it. It's like Snowpiercer.
It's a frozen over Earth. It is habitable if you have the right conditions. They're living underground instead of like a controlled train.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It was very similar to that. Yeah, I think those are all my notes. I don't think I have anything other than... There was sentimentality in this movie. I mean, we've covered 2 other movies that are from Asia that have subtitles.
Yeah. One
thing that I've learned from watching and covering the few that we have is they're just not afraid to kill off main characters. Like, they will kill them off. So even though Chi was like the main character, I did not know if he would survive. Like, he and his sister, I really did not know.
Yeah.
Who would
even
survive
to the end where when it jumped those 3 years and we see him then, that's the only way that I knew he still lived. Because I was almost expecting to, he saved his sister by inflating the big ball thing that had shown up a couple times throughout the movie. And I was waiting for and then it got blown up and then she was okay, but his, helmet was all shattered. At that point, I was completely accepting it and he dies. Yeah. I was ready to move on with that because that's how these movies go.
Absolutely. So I think of that as well. And I mean, we've seen it in other films like Train to Busan. So yeah, I expected it. I didn't expect him to survive and he did. And he's all still part of the group. I mean, I'm glad they gave us that 3 years in the future view.
Yeah.
Because that kind of made me feel, I think, it ended in a way that wasn't completely hopeless. I was feeling like, oh, okay. Things seem to have turned out okay.
There's still 2,500 years of things that could go wrong ahead of them. Yeah. But I love, my final note on here, as I say, and now the wandering begins.
Yes.
Because they've made it around Jupiter's gravitational pull and it's pushed them out. And so now there's no other... So at least they have that. There's no obstacles in their way. It's just a 2,500 year float.
Yeah.
Just the wandering, until they get to where they're supposed to go. Then they switch the blasters.
Yes.
So I guess they turn off all of the engines on their side, and then all the engines on the dark side boot up, and they start descending, or like, slowing down, decelerating.
Yeah. I mean, the sun was the villain in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
The sun was the villain, like we talked about at the top of the podcast. The sun was having some issues, and the sun had become very unstable. And it was kind of neat, though, too, how the world came together to form this new United Earth government. Like, that was the premise of how they were able to do all of these things. And I thought that was a really neat concept that kind of worked.
It makes sense when you're doing something that controls what is happening to the entire planet, not just countries and nations.
Exactly. So, yeah. So those are my... Oh, I did have one more thing. There was one really cool visual of a whale bursting through the ice that they talked about briefly, that I just wonder if it was just swimming and died. I mean, the way that things went down, it was... I mean, and again, it showed me that they were in the middle of the ocean going over things. And that just blew my mind a few times, It just did.
And then I really liked the music with the credits. The whole score was really good, but when the credits at the end hit, and it was kind of this like electronic sort of dubby thing, and I was just like, it's New Journey is the name of the track, but it's part of the soundtrack, the whole score that was done by Rock Chen. And so that track was New Journey, and I had to look it up, and then I like that a lot.
Yeah, and I don't think we've told anyone yet, but we have a very cool playlist on Spotify with music that will make you think of all the movies that we've covered. There's a track for every single movie.
Yeah, some of them are extremely wide reaches that don't make any sense, and like unless you're me and my brain. And then some of them, like this one, I'll tell you, that one is the one that I put on there for this movie. And so you can hear so some of them are like the Jurassic Park like main song is on there and stuff. Like some of them are just exactly from the movie, but most of them are usually just random songs that like some random part of the movie made me think of, and that's where I went. But yeah.
Yeah, so if you'd like to play the connection game, you can listen to the soundtrack. It's on Spotify. I'm going to be putting it in our show notes that go out with the podcast, so you should be able to see it. I'll also share it on our social media. Take a listen and see if you can figure out which movies go with which song. Like Pake said, some of them are pretty obvious and others are not.
Yep.
But it's all fun. It's a fun little soundtrack. All right.
So that was all of my notes, but you do have your production notes and fun tidbits and stuff to get into.
I do. So Frant Gwo is a science fiction fan and was influenced by James Cameron's T2 Judgment Day, which I feel like influences a lot of films nowadays.
Oh, yeah.
To build his world, he brought in 4 scientists from the Chinese Academy of Sciences as consultants. And there were 3,000 concept maps created over a 15-month period. So maybe that's where some of the budget went as well. So, popular martial artist and actor Wu Jing was invited to do a cameo, but this role ended up changing to a lead part. He was the only big name in the film, and the director just kept adding scenes. And we mentioned this earlier, too, that when production ran into financial trouble, he gave up his salary and invested $9 million of his own money in the film so production could continue. As Peg said, I think he probably made that money back and then some.
Yeah. I'm sure they gave him plenty of a cut off of a $700 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I think he did good.
Yes, he definitely did.
Which I'm wondering now, I'm curious if he only would have filmed like one scene, because it would have been like, I'm going to space at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
And then would they have just still done the same thing but given it to a different astronaut, and it wouldn't have had as an emotional of a touch to it if he didn't have all these scenes of dealing with Moss and going up the space station and having the conversation with his father and with his son.
I think this would have been a different movie. And I don't know if it would have worked as well. It had to be him. Had to be him. So the visual effects were provided by More VFX Beijing, House of VFX, Bottleship VFX, Dexter Studios, Pixel Light Effects, and, oh my God, Weta Workshop.
Our favorites.
Yes. Weta Workshop was involved with this one as well. They have been involved in many of the movies that we've covered. So they do great work. I'm a big fan. The music, which we talked about a little bit, is performed by the British Royal Philharmonic Orchestra. Okay, let's do that again. So the music is performed by the British Royal Philharmonic Orchestra and was conducted by Rock Chen, and the recording actually took place at Abbey Road Studios.
Awesome.
Really cool. I loved the music in this film. It was amazing. I feel like I have to go and listen to the soundtrack now, the whole thing. Even without the movie, I think it's still going to be really cool. Kind of a cool tidbit that I uncovered. Science fiction is a relatively new film genre in China, and it's a challenge to get investors due to the perception of the cost of these special effects that are needed. And because of those costs, needing to make lots and lots of money to recoup the filming and production costs. So it's really hard for them to get investors. I'm hoping, due to the success of The Wandering Earth, they'll be able to make the next one with a bit more money. Although they did really well with what they had.
Oh, yeah.
And I mentioned already that there were scenes left on the cutting room floor, and that made the story confusing at times. So again, I want the Gwo cut. Please let me see that. And there's a sequel coming in 2023.
That'll be really cool. I didn't know about that until now. Or when you mentioned it earlier at the top of the podcast. I was like, ooh, that's exciting. Again, like I said earlier in the podcast, I don't know whether that's going to focus on Chi and this group still here and other stuff that they deal with. Or it might be really cool to jump 2,500 years into the future and get an idea of what like settling in the new solar system would look like.
Yeah, I'm interested. I feel like it might have made a really cool series over time, but I'm happy with the sequel. There's really no other information out about it. I don't know if Frant Gwo is going to get the opportunity to direct the sequel, but I guess we'll see at some point.
Yeah. All right. Well, it is time to get to some quotes then. And I have a few.
I don't have very many. I only have a couple. We've kind of touched on them a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is this flashback with Lu Chi and his father. And Chi is pointing out that there's an eye on Jupiter. And his dad says, that's not an eye. There's a huge windstorm on Jupiter. Jupiter is like a huge balloon composed of 90%. And then Lu Chi says, hydrogen. And that's when he gets this whole idea. And he calls Yi and says, a hydrogen-oxygen mixture can be ignited with a single match. And so those were my favorite quotes. It was really hard because I feel like he either could have quoted a ton of things or just a few. There was no real happy medium in there, whereas sometimes I'm starting with a very long list and cutting it down. I feel like I tried to go really small with this one.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I have three. And, I usually like to pick out the funny stuff. But only one of them really is one that made me laugh. And especially as the movie went on, it got funnier. And how and I'll explain that. It is when they wind up in the jail cell and Tim, before the lights are turned on, is questioning. So you don't see it's Tim at first, but Tim is questioning Chi. And he asks him, well, how did you get here? It's that classical, how'd you wind up in jail with me? And Chi's answer is just very matter of fact, unregulated driving. And I thought it was hilarious because then as it shows, like when they get in the thing, that little like message that appears every time you're about to drive in one of those transports, it says, the UEG wants you to know that there's, all these different ways you can go, but make sure, to, think about safety while you're driving these, because unregulated driving will leave your family in tears or something like that. And so every time they would start one of these transport up, and you would hear the whole warning, unregulated driving could be.
Yes.
And so every time it would say it in the movie, this scene got funnier because just his answer of, how'd you wind up here? Unregulated driving.
Yeah, it was pretty funny.
Yeah.
Tim was funny all around. It didn't matter. He was just the comic relief.
Yes. But then the other two that I had that I really liked, one, it just kind of early in the movie set up a really cool understanding of what was going on with things, is while they're unregulated driving in the transport. But Dodo asks, or notices, she goes, "Whoa, that's the Earth engine." And I like Chi's little explanation. He says, these are propulsion engines. There are 10,000 of them around the globe, made for pushing Earth forward. This isn't the most gigantic one. Those torque engines along the equator, they are the real giants. And I thought that was really cool, just setting up
Yeah. Explaining the importance of both. They both had a job.
Yeah. And my last one I really liked is when they're deciding to go with this plan to shoot this beam up and ignite Jupiter. And it's two members of, or it's Wang Lei and a member of his team, whereas a member of his team, Z, tells him that's a suicide mission. And his response is, yes, but it's much better than waiting to die.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really cool.
like that one as well. Because it's true. I mean, and I think it ties into the rest of the film. You can either wait to die or you can try to do something. Even if you think it's a suicide mission, you still have a chance of surviving.
Mm-hmm.
But if you do nothing, it's over.
Yeah, exactly.
And I feel like that kind of is an ongoing thread in this film, is you could sit by and do nothing, or you could fight.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, here's our fun moment, is rankings. I'm really interested to see how this goes after this conversation, too.
Oh, yeah. It always comes down to this, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Always has to.
And you're waiting because you want me to go first.
Of course.
Okay. All right. I'll take it. I loved this movie. I thought it had some CGI issues at times, but it also had some breathtaking visuals. I do think that most of the money was sunk into the effects, especially when you have 7 or 8 effects companies working on this film. That was not cheap. So I feel like a lot was put into that. I liked the story, although I really, like I said, want to see these deleted scenes or scenes that didn't make it into the film to help explain some of the things that I missed. And I'm afraid that I'm going to come in lower than you on this one.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to give it a 7.8.
Oh my gosh. 2 in a row we're doing this week. Because...
No way.
Pretty much for the exact same reasons. I will say that some of the CGI was a little rough, but some of the stuff was great. It was a little, not convoluted, but hard to follow in some places, and the science is a little wonky. But I do appreciate that, a lot of care was taken in the stories and the characters. So you're gonna laugh like I did, because my ranking on here is 7.8.
Oh my god.
Okay, we've been doing this too long now. We're starting to fall right in line with even our rankings. So.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
That's funny.
That is really funny. Because like we've talked about, we don't talk about how we feel about a movie.
Yeah.
I might let Pake know, okay, I've watched it, but I don't tell him, and he doesn't tell me what he thinks.
Yeah, we save it for here.
We save it for here. Even when we're just getting ready to record, we don't talk about it because we want to save it all and bring it to the podcast. So the fact that this is the second movie in a row that we have graded it the same. Oh, well, I guess we'll see you next week.
Yeah, see how long we can keep this up.
Oh, goodness.
Awesome.
You know what that means.
That is the feedback phone.
You better answer it.
We have one little bit of feedback this week. We have our patent pending live Steving from our good friend Steve Brown. Always look forward to it, so let's get on with it.
Hey, Daphne and Pake, it's Steve, and I'm about to start The Wandering Earth. Literally totally cold. Have no idea what this movie's about. I didn't even know it had subtitles, so I'm going to have to, I had to pause it here because I'm going to have to pay attention. You guys making me watch movies I got to pay attention to? Come on. Okay, these subtitles are running way too fast. I'm going to do my best to keep up with it, but I did switch it to the Mandarin with the English subtitles because I know that's the way you like me to watch them. Can it degenerate and expand? Wouldn't it expand, make it bigger? Wait, is this going to be Lost in Space Planet? Subtitles are going so fast. I have no idea what's going on. What population is able to survive? And now they're putting them in these alien pod things? Is this like a tourist trip to the surface of the Earth? They give you your own transport? So Grandpa comes to bail him out and he gets put in jail? What? Dude, you may have to put that helmet back on your head. Oh, yeah, you're about to. Helmet looks pretty clean now. I don't know how he did that. There's a whole lot of time left on this movie, so I'm assuming they're going to get this engine restarted. And we're to assume that there's a group of teenage delinquents led by an old man and a weird guy and all the other 4,000 engines getting them started. That's so sad. His dad no longer exists to him. Whatever your name is, you're going to help. I don't know about the science, but it's exhilarating. Whoa, that was tense. He got him out of there, just in time. It is unreasonable to expect humans to stay reasonable. Well, okay, I missed about 50% now. I don't know. It was good. I enjoyed it. I'm glad it had a good ending. And, 2,500 years from now, we'll see. Sorry this one went long. Talk to you later.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, sorry the subtitles were a little rough on you sometimes. It was, I don't really remember if it was going too fast or not, but I watch a lot of movies like that. I know you're not the biggest fan of that, but yeah, it seems like you got the gist of it and you enjoyed it. So I'm glad for you on that one.
Yeah, Steve, I appreciate you taking the time to watch the movie the way that we like you to watch it, even though it might be a little more challenging for you. So thank you for sticking with us and for checking out this film. Glad you liked it.
Yes. Awesome. Well, for anyone who wants to leave us any kind of feedback for The Wandering Earth, even though it's already over, or for what we're going to do next week, which we'll talk about in a little bit, or anything else we've already covered previously, or stuff you want us to cover, you just want to say hi and tell us how awesome you think we are. We'll always accept that too. And you can leave any of that feedback on Facebook at facebook.com/runforyourlivespodcast. You can email us or send in voicemails at runforyourlivespodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter at RFYL Podcast and Instagram at Run For Your Lives Podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please share the love, spread the word, tell your friends. Send everybody to runforyourlivespodcast.com. You can get links to all those social media and our podcast players and things like that. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Audible, Pandora. We are on YouTube. YouTube's a good place to, if you want to be able to just watch podcast episodes, even though there is no video, but it's there. And yeah, we appreciate any way that you find us and spread the word.
Yeah, our YouTube channel, we've gotten a few more subscribers, and one or two of our videos has really gotten a lot of listens, so I'm excited. Yeah. I wasn't sure about adding everything to YouTube, but now I think, it's a great idea. So I know a lot of people listen in many different places, so I just want to be out there for you guys.
For sure. We always appreciate however you listen. It's great that you do. So I'll go ahead and throw out to some stuff that is going on in our podcast universe around us, of course. Any fans of Strange Indeed, good news. We are recording an episode of Strange Indeed over this next week, so be on the lookout for that next week. Me and Daphne are both going to be talking with Rima about Mortal Kombat, the new 2021
Can't wait.
movie. It's going to be a blast. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to talk Mortal Kombat and have a good chat with Rima over on Strange Indeed this week.
Yeah, we had a great time with her when we had her on the podcast to talk about Jaws. So I'm really looking forward to chatting about Mortal Kombat.
Yes, it'll be a lot of fun. And then on the Podcastica side of things, on the Walking Dead cast, they are covering Fear the Walking Dead. This week's episode, I was on it with my good friend Megan. Me and her got to talk with Jason about an actually good episode of Fear the Walking Dead this season.
Yeah.
So that was a nice treat. I watched the episode to prep for it, and I was like, oh, yay, I got a good one. Because that show can be quite hit or miss sometimes. So.
Yeah, it's very up and down. You just don't know when you're going into it what's going to happen. So when it's a good one, you definitely appreciate it.
Yes. And then another Podcastica podcast is, of course, House Podcastica. And Daphne has been over there for a little bit. Tell them what you're doing on Podcastica.
So myself, Wendy, and Jason are covering season 4 of The Handmaid's Tale. So we did a look back, which was a kind of a long podcast, looking at seasons 1 through 3. It wasn't quite as long as our episodes 1, 2, and 3 podcast, which was about 3 hours. But we just posted one on episode 4, which was titled Milk. And I'm having a blast every week getting to chat with them and break down this fantastic show.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. I'm still catching up on watching it. I'm like a little like halfway through season 3, so I'm getting there.
You are.
I'm getting there.
Keep it up.
Yes. And then, of course, other podcast friends of ours, TV Podcast Industries, our good friend Derek over there. They are covering The Bad Batch, the new Star Wars animated series on Disney+. And then also they just released an episode where they covered Assembled, the making of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And so if you're a fan of the Marvel and Disney Star Wars stuff, definitely check out TV Podcast Industries right now. They got some good stuff for you.
Yeah, I can't wait to watch that and then listen to their podcast about it.
Yes. And finally, our good friend Damien is launching a new podcast. So there is not an episode out yet, but he should be launching very soon. But there is a trailer, little teaser for it that you can go check out and go ahead and follow him on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever services you use. His podcast is called Watched It in the 80s, and he will be talking all things movies and TV that people loved in the 80s. And so, yeah, it'll be a good time.
I know. I'm excited. I talked to him earlier today, and he's excited to get this out in the airwaves because he's been working on it for a while, and yeah, he's got some episodes ready to go. So I'm looking forward to getting to check out that first podcast from him. The teaser trailer was great.
Yes, it really was. I listened to that earlier this week, and it was a lot of fun. And then, yeah, of course, I'm already subscribed or following it on Spotify, and I will be checking out those new episodes as soon as he starts dropping them.
Absolutely. Me too.
Speaking of good stuff going on podcasts, Daphne, what is happening next week right here on Run for Your Lives?
Well, Pake, next week, we're going to be discussing the 2014 American horror comedy film, Cooties.
Yes.
What do you get when you cross the creator of the Saw and Insidious movie franchises with one of the creators of Fox's musical TV series Glee? 94 minutes of hilarious and creepy fun. Pake and I had a blast talking about this one, and I cannot wait to get it out there. Like with most of our episodes, I'm always excited to get them out there. But this one, there was just a ton of laughs, and yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. By saying this, I'm already kind of showing my hand a little bit that you know how I'm going to feel while we're covering it. But yeah, it's one of my absolute favorite movies. It's just a blast. And so I'm really glad that we got to cover it. And I hope that you guys go check it out and watch it. I think it's on Amazon Prime right now. I could be wrong, but I think that's where it's at.
Yeah.
If not, then message me on Facebook and tell me I'm wrong, and I'll try to find out where you can find it for you.
Absolutely.
Because I think you should watch it. Yeah. Everybody definitely watch that movie. Give us your feedback or thoughts, or just watch it because it's awesome and you should.
Absolutely. There's a lot of familiar faces in it.
Yes.
Like you're going to see, Elijah Wood's in it, Lee Wanell, who is the creator of Saw and Insidious. He's in it. Yeah, it's just a fantastic, fun watch.
Rainn Wilson.
Oh my gosh.
That should be the selling point right there. Freaking Rainn Wilson.
Rainn Wilson. Allison Pill. It's just full of some great talent, and we had a blast talking about it.
Yes.
With that, we've reached the end of another fun-filled episode. Thanks, everyone, for listening. I am Daphne.
And I'm Pake.
And if you have to run from an enormous, out-of-control sun that's intent on making the Earth a thing of the past, you better run for your lives.
Bye-bye.